Hello, welcome. Welcome joining at this late-ish hour. So I don't hope to just keep you too long. And hello again, I'm Unen. I am working as OpenStreetMap trainer with Open Mapping Hub Asia Pacific in collaboration with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team. I'm also a board member of Yer Çizenler in Turkey, which is local entity, local NGOs, part of the Turkish OpenStreetMap community that has collaborated a couple of times in the past with also the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. I'm an OpenStreetMap trainer since the start of 2022. I'm the board member of Yer Çizenler since 2018, and I'm an OpenStreetMap contributor, OpenStreetMap user since 2012. So I have, although they're connected, I have different hats sometimes that I'm wearing. So this is how you can get in touch with me, how you can find me on Twitter, how you can find me on OpenStreetMap. So please feel free to chat, maybe have a beer afterwards. And tomorrow as well, there's also going to be a couple of, we have Said, where was Said? I saw him. Oh yeah. You were moving, okay, so Said will also have a keynote about that. So you are going to probably hear a couple of overlaps throughout the conference. We also have Orkut, he is also going to present maybe a bit related to the earthquake community activation in Kahramanmaraş. Okay, there's some person in the background. So OpenStreetMap is, we can call it the Wikipedia of maps. It is a crowdsourced, community-based project to map the whole world. I'm sure there are lots of people who are familiar. There might be some people who are not very much familiar, but when it is an open database, openly accessible for everyone. And this is also how Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team is operating. Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team is part of the global big OpenStreetMap community. And we are part of a very amazing project called the Missing Maps project. And the goal is to map areas where people live at risk of disasters and crisis. And there are different levels and different processes that the mapping is carried out. And one of them is the volunteers globally are contributing to the map, contributing to the missing data, try to complete what they see from the satellite images and put it on the map. So it can be a road, it can be a building, it can be a lake, whatever, but whatever we see which is not represented on the map should be represented. Then more experienced mappers or data quality people go through that areas and do a remote validation to see is everything in order, to see if the digitization is accurate, to see if everything is compatible with the OpenStreetMap community guidelines. Then, with the local partners, local communities, the third level of mapping is put more detail and more information to that data on the field. So that is where we are actively trying to work at, directly with communities, local partners, because as the local owner of the data, as the experts for the local context, collaboration and support of those actors are crucial in order to achieve that third step in the project, and in order to have accurate, usable, high quality, and hopefully up-to-date data belonging to the places at risk. So HUB is an international team dedicated to humanitarian action and community development through open mapping, and we have also lots of colleagues here, Sini, Jitesh, Nirav, Petya, Yogesh. So we have around 100 staff globally. We have 4 dedicated regional hubs that are specifically focusing on the local partners, local communities in a local context. So instead of a global one-size-fits-all approach, what we are trying to do with the hubs is every hub is operating with regards to the local context where the communities and the community decisions and priorities would matter. So how can that support humanitarian response. And each year, disasters around the world affect, displace, or kill millions of people. And missing maps can result in aid not reaching communities affected by disasters. And we are seeing this thing repeating itself over and over again because generally the support, the contribution, the response is always happening, and we are always remembering about these things after they happen. And it is very hard to mobilize those communities, mobilize these actors beforehand so that we already have good quality data that the local actors, local responders, local communities, local governments are able to use. So with the open mapping hubs, the 4 regional hubs, we are trying to connect NGOs, governments, and local communities so that they can use open data in decision making, so they can get involved firsthand in that instead of just like HOT being an organization moving to a place, implementing a project, and leaving with all of the data, experience, all of the resources after the project, and leaving nothing on the field. Instead, we are trying to have a community-first approach where even after the completion of a project, the data, the skills, the experience, the knowledge would also be there on the ground, remaining with the community, so that it would be a more sustainable and vibrant community, OpenStreetMap community on the ground. So, don't we already have maps in our pocket? So if we are coming from the more developed regions of the world, we are always asking, I have a smartphone, that smartphone in my pocket have different mapping applications, and I have all I need, but it doesn't always the case. So the first day following the earthquake, we see Dr. Çevik. Dr. Çevik is a medical doctor, member of working for the Ministry of Health, and he was deployed on the field following. And the aftermath was huge, and they really didn't know where to go. They didn't have any sense of direction. And he said, the day-to-day apps that I'm using in my pocket, because of the connectivity issues, they didn't work. So they were not able to navigate, they were not able to find their way. And incidentally, he heard about organic maps. And organic maps is a mobile app, a navigational app, working with OpenStreetMap data. And once you install organic maps, once you open, it asks you to download the data of your region on your phone. So you can do that with Google Maps, by the way, but if you just go to settings, if you just download cache at different levels, etc., so it has an option to have offline data, but organic maps is directly downloading the most up-to-date OpenStreetMap data. So they were able to navigate where they didn't have any connectivity on the field. So there's a tiny CC link, there's a shortened URL. If you want to go there and watch his full statement, that statement is available on YouTube. So, we were trying to activate around OpenStreetMap, and in connection with the Turkish OpenStreetMap community, which I'm partially part of, so I had lots of mix-up, I have lots of initial conflicts, internal conflicts, because sometimes I wasn't also able to tell which organization I was representing. Am I speaking as a member of the Turkish community? Am I speaking as a member of Yer Çizenler? Am I speaking as a member of HOT? So, I mean, it was a hard time for me as well. But what we did at HOT, we had looked at the hazard maps, and by looking at the hazard maps, the impacted area, we looked at the health facilities, fire stations, police stations, etc. So what are the public services there, and have an idea of how those public services might have affected. That was just at the initial stage, just to draw some perspective maybe. But again, it is limited by the availability of OpenStreetMap data. I mean, we were not sure if this was an up-to-date data or not, but this was the data available on OpenStreetMap. And with the activation of Yer Çizenler and the Turkish OpenStreetMap community, and also Help NGO, also like representatives of the Missing Maps project. So there are lots of mapping tasks that was created both within Turkey and within Syria. And with this collaboration, which you will hear more of the Yer Çizenler side from Said tomorrow, with that collaboration, like there were little more than 9,000 volunteer contributions, mapping more than 2 million buildings, digitizing more than 80,000 kilometers of road, adding that missing information to the map. And this is what I was saying. I mean, it is not possible for us, for other communities, to mobilize 9,000 people if there is not an emergency, which is the sad part of it. So after that activation, we were also working, trying to gather most up-to-date data, because we had, with the open imagery services, there were imagery from Maxar, Bing, Mapbox, etc., but it was all belonging to a time before the earthquake, and we didn't have any information. What is the physical damage? What is the physical situation on the ground? Like, you got the damaged buildings, destroyed buildings, are there road closures, had there any landslides occur, etc. So we didn't have much information about the physical situation there. But the days following that, a couple of days after, because of the cloud coverage, we were not able to get data immediately, but with the help of Maxar, with the help of Planet, with the help of Batuhan there sitting, he had an integral part of the imagery coordination, coordinating with the imagery providers, and he maintained that imagery coordination using Open Aerial Map with Cristiano from HUT, from our team as well. So big thanks and big appreciation to both Batuhan and Cristiano on that as well. And Open Aerial Map is a tool that we have that is available for everyone to host open imagery, imagery that is created and shared with open licenses. So if you have an open license, if you have a public license, if you have a CC license, and if you have that imagery, if you want to host that imagery, but if you don't know how to host it, or if you don't have the resources to host it, you can use Open Aerial Map there. And there were also some drone operators contributing to that imagery as well. So with the help of these efforts, we were able to also put together these kinds of images as well, which are giving more information about what has happened after the earthquake on the field. There are lots of disturbing images like that, like lots of the cities, lots of the settlements were just grounded. And what Open Aerial Map and also Contour, the gold sponsors as well, what did, they had a mosaic add-on. So although these images were individually uploaded, although you can have WMTS server links for individual images, with the mosaic add-on that was provided by Contour, we were able to just merge all of the available imageries as a single image, as a single mosaic, so that we were able to use it in the background at OpenStreetMap edits. So we had, there were 16 projects. Some of them were managed by HUT, some of them were managed by Yer Çizenler, some of them were managed by Help.NGO, but there were 16 projects, and as of now, most of them are at 90–95% completion, and some of the regions are very tricky because it's hard to identify because of the image resolution. It's hard to identify clearly because of very dense structure of the city, but 9 of them are currently fully mapped, 100% mapped, and out of that 9, 7 of them are fully validated. And the remaining are mapped and validated in around like 95%, 97%, etc. So, that data, why did it matter? This was one great example. So, AKUT and AFAD. AKUT is the Search and Rescue Association in Turkey. AFAD is the Disaster Management Agency, Government Disaster Management Agency in Turkey. AFAD has internal systems Afad had a geospatial database. Afad had a decision-making tool, decision-making data, and they were able to do that. Models, maps, decision-making stuff, etc. But the people on the field were not able to access that. Or even if they access, I mean, if we are just seeing that data on your screen, it doesn't mean that you can use that data. So they unofficially turned into OpenStreetMap. And the situation maps, they got reports on damaged buildings, they had reports on collapsed buildings. Also, because of the imagery that were available, OpenStreetMap contributors were able to digitize the collapsed building information. And instead of their million-dollar services that are running somewhere in Istanbul, they use OpenStreetMap data because they needed to act fast, and they really needed that data, and they have created their situation maps, again unofficially using OpenStreetMap data. So, with the help of that community, with that 2 million building plus the existing buildings in the dataset, 80,000 kilometers of road plus already existing road network in that dataset. So, thanks to Chitish, hello, he had managed the HDX exports, humanitarian data exchange exports, and 1 or 2 months even after the earthquake, the building data for Turkey, the road data for Turkey, and also the collapsed building information of Turkey was the most downloaded data set in HDX. So lots of organizations, lots of people, lots of individuals were able to reach that data where they were maybe just using simply as a background in their maps, maybe they were using analysis. We also had people making analysis that they were overlaying the destroyed building information with the pharmacy information, pharmacy data. And immediately they had an idea about are the pharmacies operational, or how much of the pharmacies are likely to be operational in the field. So again, with that closed servers, with the silos that lots of the organizations have, this information, you could not extract that information, you could not mine that information, but it was made available with the contribution of the communities through OpenStreetMap. So again, maps, infographics from different organizations such as REACH, Crisis Ready, World Food Program, and MSF, they utilize OpenStreetMap data. They utilize that data that was created and enhanced and produced with the help of the community, that 9,000 people. So then, in the recovery stage, and when the immediate response has ended, there is a recovery stage, and the drama and the need and the trouble is not ending there. And if you still go to the earthquake region, even after that months have passed, there are still lots of needs and lots of issues related to infrastructure. There are still lots of issues related to housing. And with the help of the community, with the help of OpenStreetMap contributors, it is possible to also monitor or reflect those changes directly on the map. Again, the commercial mapping products that we have in our pockets, they might not be that fast in updating the situation, or there might be maybe more inaccurate or maybe slow in reflecting that. But with an active contribution community, it is possible to reflect all of those changes, and lots of changes are happening very rapidly, even after that recovery stages. And again, there's another representative of the Ministry of Health, Dr. Uçum. He was stationed in Kahramanmaraş in one of the campsites, where the displaced people were living in the tents. But there are lots of issues in infrastructure. They didn't have access to water, electricity, food, sanitation, etc. And with the support of the Turkish OpenStreetMap community, there was a micro-mapping effort in that camp. And all of the tents, all of the roads within the tents, the locations of the sanitation facilities, numbers of the tents, the identification of the tents, etc., they were mapped. And by using those maps, they have designed the infrastructural services within the camp. Within that map, by using that map, Dr. Uçum is describing how they were able to monitor the outbreaks, the disease outbreaks within the camp. So again, this is not a data set that you can find in those central databases. This is not a data set that you can find in, again, the commercial navigational apps that we have. This is really a temporary data, but this is a vital information that those people were able to use and access via OpenStreetMap. So there were also lots of issues, there were lots of problems in the ground or within the communities also as well. So, but everything is also a learning opportunity, and there is no standard for any disaster. So from region to region, things might be different. Even within the same region, even within the same area, but different times and different disasters, the shape of things might be completely different as well. So it is not very easy to anticipate those. So there needs to be some quick decisions, there needs to be some adaptations all the time. But as a feedback, when shared as a feedback, this question was asked: what are the data quality issues that you encountered in using OpenStreetMap data? That question was asked to the local communities, that question was asked to the local partners, and it says, there were inaccuracies on AI-assisted mapping, especially on dense urban settings. So, yeah, there were the AI-assisted mapping, again, thanks to Meta and Rapid. The Rapid editor was deployed, and one of the reasons that the fast digitization of those buildings were also made possible with the AI-assisted mapping. But there were, especially in dense urban regions, the AI suggestions were if the buildings are very close to each other, if the buildings are side by side. Sometimes they were identified as multiple buildings, was identified as a single building. And there, the experience and the experience and knowledge of the mappers mattered a lot, because lots of lots of first-time mappers were also contributing, and they were not able to tell, they were not able to validate that data. So if there are inaccuracies within the AI-assisted mapping, some of the mappers, especially newly starting mappers, were not able to tell, were not able to correct that. So that was one data issue that we had. Raw network classification suggestions sometimes was inaccurate, or the AI-assisted mapping was suggesting people, but again, it was a suggestion, and the mappers were needing to validate if that was a valid suggestion or not, but some of them were taking these suggestions as granted. So again, there were inaccuracies sometimes on the data. Also, ID Editor has some data quality issues and warnings. Some there's also validation scripts, validation tools in it, but those warnings were sometimes misinterpreted. So, for example, the digitization of a building intersecting with a road, and the ID Editor warning was just saying, I mean, there's a road on top of a building, but they cannot be on the same layer. One way to fix it is that if it's an underground way, if there's below or over the building, you can add a layer information. And the users were adding that. So there was, this is also another data quality issue when you are using the data. Or the damage mapping, by looking at the aerial images, we were able to tell the collapsed buildings and collapsed building, but we did not have any information about the damaged buildings that are standing there. So they were not mapped as damaged. So again, there was the incompleteness of that. We were only able to identify the collapsed building.
Can you wrap up?
Sorry?
You can wrap up now.
Yes. I'm wrapping up. So what advice would you give to someone who's interested in using OpenStreetMap? Complete the map data before any emergency strikes. Try to mobilize this many volunteers or these efforts before there's an emergency. What were other data sources? I think Saeed is also going to talk a little bit that tomorrow, right? Yeah, so the Ministry of Urbanization have shared tabular data with address information, and there were efforts within the community that were digitized, not geocoded. The data was geocoded and made available, again, with contribution by Yer Çizenler. Please come to Said's keynote tomorrow to hear more about that. But there were also other data sets. But sharing of other open data sets and resources not compatible with OSM license was a blocker for our side because there were other data there, but it was incompatible to reflect an OpenStreetMap. And how do you think it will be used in future emergency response efforts? If the base map is kept accurate and up to date by the community and other local and regional actors, volunteer mapping efforts can be more focused on the physical situation on the ground instead of playing catch up. So 10 days, 2 weeks after the earthquake, we were trying to still map the buildings and roads that were there before the earthquake without looking at the damage. Thank you. Was I speaking too fast? Was I speaking fast?
Well, I understand that in early cases, a lot of contributors contribute to OpenStreetMap with their images, relay scanning. Who is the one that is responsible for caring for all the infrastructure that handles these?
The infrastructure that handles the data?
Yeah.
OpenStreetMap. So like there's okay.
Is it the central one, or is it based on only the OpenStreetMap's hubs that you listed?
No, OpenStreetMap is managed by OpenStreetMap Foundation.
Yeah.
So like Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team is one entity within the OpenStreetMap ecosystem. And what Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team is doing with the tasking manager. The tasking manager is enabling coordination among mappers so that the mapping efforts were more coordinated, are not overlapping and with each other. So the tasking manager tool, we are setting up mapping projects. We are calling volunteers to map there. And it is dividing the mapping area into grids so that individual mappers are assigned or asked to map certain regions. And when they complete mapping, the validation teams, more experienced OpenStreetMap contributors, can go back to that grid and validate if the data is accurately digitized or not. But the server is OpenStreetMap server. It's not managed in any way by Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team. It is publicly available, publicly accessible, but what we are contributing there is with the coordination and the mapping and tech tools that are associated for that coordination. But the ownership of the data is publicly available. Yeah.
I think,
She was
I
first.
think the question,
Sorry.
who's responsible? Is there someone responsible for the, that was the question, I guess.
I mean, he kind of answered because he said OpenStreetMap is the one who handles servers, so I guess they deal in how it would be, they deal in the architectural part of the data.
But for the data quality part, yes, we are responsible because we are coordinating that effort. We are calling for that volunteer effort. So the data quality there, it's HUD's responsibility, but the server side, the keeping the data, managing the data is managed by OpenStreetMap servers.
Curious about your strategy to try to get people to contribute outside of emergency situations. Do you have an active strategy to get more participation?
Yeah, we are trying to engage with local organizations, local communities, and there are lots of awareness studies and also lots of strategic partnership work for anticipatory action in regions. But again, all hubs are operating more or less internally. They are deciding their own strategies regionally. But yeah, so there are lots of regional actors, local actors that we are in touch with. So try to showcase events like that, cases like that, so that maybe for another region, the data is there before something happens. So identify the risk and take that anticipatory action for preparedness. Yeah, so there are also examples of that, and that's organizations that we are partnering up with in order to collect that data beforehand.
are they like primarily universities or nonprofits? Just kind of curious.
Oh, yeah. So there are universities, and universities are generally the sources of the up and coming community members. So it's a very good resource for technical people who can be mappers. Local governments and local organizations are a very key part of that. So if you have local government support and collaboration, things would be a lot more easier. And there are always like NGOs that are working regionally, but they have their projects, they have their focus regions, etc. And we try to collaborate with those organizations as well to raise that awareness.
There was a question in the back, I guess.
If you were speaking to one of the imagery providers, what would you ask that they do differently to help with a future response?
Oh.
Can I jump in? So basically, like UN Charter program, we have seen that there is a massive coverage, but the access to this imagery for coming was quite limited. So I like nice visual. We had only like access to 20% of those images. So we had some access, but we cannot share with the community. So I would like to encourage everyone to open more license, open more images. So that was the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and in addition to that, from the Istanbul Technical University, we also had access to other imagery, but it was not with open licenses, so we had to use that internally. Again, I'm speaking as Yer Çizenler right now.
So basically, we have a login. We can see the images, but we cannot share with others. So basically, with handful of amount of volunteers, it's impossible to digitize like collapse building. So we need to basically need bigger volunteer group which can help us to basically digitize. Yeah, that was unfortunate, really.
Yeah, I was wondering, for example, if you're a volunteer and you want to digitize some maps, are there like any high priority regions that are predefined, or do you just look for any missing data?
Tomorrow, Hani's presentation, right? So, I mean, Hani, the GIS associate within the Open Mapping Hub, she has also a presentation. She's not here personally, but it is recorded. So she has a process for that prioritization, and she's developing a QGIS add-on for that. So it is just putting the risk data, the population data, and the completeness analysis, the completeness of OpenStreetMap data. When you put them together, you can have a prioritization. So that can help. That would be a very good starting point to identify those regions. But sometimes we already have like communities and partners already working in some regions. So if you go to Tasking Manager, and if you want to hear more detail, Petya is the person to help that. The Tasking Manager, there are lots of active mapping projects going. Some of them are very urgent, some of them have medium urgency with different urgencies, but you can go there and see where mapping support is needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess we close the session.